Welcome to Live, Laugh, Launch, the podcast where we take your go-to-market strategy seriously.
But not too seriously. We're your co-hosts. I'm Katie.
And I'm Veronica.
And we're marketing pros who've survived enough launches to know that perfection is a myth and coffee, and sometimes cocktails, are a must.
In this podcast, we talk strategy, share hard-earned lessons, and say the quiet part out loud, whether you asked for it or not.
We'll tackle the good, the bad, and the hilarious of marketing so you can giggle, not gaggle, your way through your next launch.
Because if you're not living, laughing, and launching, are you even marketing?
Let's get into it. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Live, Laugh, Launch. Today, we have James Harper joining us. James has spent over 15 years helping Fortune 500 companies tell their stories through marketing. As Vertana's Director of Product Marketing, he identifies what IT leaders care about and shares solutions in a memorable and shareable way. Prior to working at Vertana, James led marketing efforts at AWS, Samsung, Hewlett-Packard, and several IT startups. He graduated from BYU with a bachelor's degree in global marketing and earned an MBA from the University of Texas at Austin. When he's not working on marketing stuff, James enjoys spending time with his family, exploring the outdoors, and volunteering in the community. Thank you, James, for joining us today. We're so excited to have you here.
I'm super excited. First, I got to say, James, I blame you for getting me into this field, but in a good way. I remember watching you and saying, I want to do what he does because you were just so good at it.
Well, thank you. No, I'm super excited to be here with both of you. You two are some of my favorite people and really enjoyed working with you at our past company. And yeah, I've heard from a couple of people that when they make the transition in a marketing or product marketing specifically, that for better or worse, it's because they made it look too fun. And they get into it and they're like, wait a second, I don't know if this is really where I want to be. No, I'm just kidding. But it's been fun.
It's mostly fun.
It's
mostly
fun and it's mostly stressful, but
yeah,
you definitely made it look less stressful and mostly fun. So
well,
you're
good.
either a
I'm
good
glad.
actor or you're very good at what you do.
Maybe more on the acting piece, but
well, we can always have a quick therapy session, between all of us product marketers. So
I really think we should.
We totally could. I'm thinking of how much notice did you get for that most recent launch? All the types of things that we'd want to talk about.
Yes, or the launch that you didn't know launched.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That was good too.
Yeah.
Or the launch that got delayed 3 times. Or a year.
Yeah.
In your case.
Let's not go there.
Well, we're going to kind of dig into your background, James, and learn a little bit about you and also just talk about switching up careers. You've switched up industries quite a lot. Veronica and I have as well. We know that's not everyone's background, and it's certainly an interesting way to go about things from a product marketing perspective. So, James, when you're thrown into a new product or industry, where do you start? How do you go about learning about that new product or industry?
Oh boy, that's a great question. And you're spot on. I've bounced around a bit. I've been in technology, and people would say, oh, if you're in the technology industry, that's the industry in itself, and it's not that different. But I would respectfully disagree with that approach, because when you look at, just as an example, when I was at HP, I was on the PC services team. And so you're working on how do I sell and position services. And then I went to Samsung, where it was commercial grade TVs. We called them large format displays, or LFDs. And that's a very different set of selling motions and buyer needs and different personas that you're selling to. And then from there, I went to Rackspace, which was a variety of different things there, but mainly cloud.
Yeah, I forgot you worked there.
Yeah. And then I was with a cybersecurity company for a little bit, and that was really fun. And then AWS being a very large cloud company, where their big thing is the cloud is it. The cloud is where you want to be. And then I got to meet you two wonderful people at Sugar CRM, which was super cool. And here's what was really interesting to me. was going to sugar CRM where we weren't the top dog in the space.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was an interesting shift. All these other companies that I'd been at, we were either the leaders or within the top three. Right?
Yeah.
And so working for Sugar CRM was really interesting because we're generally not on the top 5 list of people's CRM choice. So learning how to
Or definitely
navigate
in
that
terms
was,
of market share, at least.
yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, good point. Good point. That's important. That's an important distinction. It's a fantastic product. I was telling one of my IT admins here, like you should consider sugar. So, and then with Vertana now we're kind of an observability technology. So each of these has been very different. And the way I get started whenever I join a company is actually it starts well before I start during the interview process. And the main reason for that is I want to make sure that this industry is something that I can get excited about, that there's some depth that's really interesting to me. And so if I get into it and I just become amazed and it kind of kindles my personal fire and passion for what it is that they are doing in this space, then it makes it easier for me to be able to immerse myself in that space. And so that's my first thing. And then once I join the company, that's when I go, okay, I have a lot more that I need to learn. And my secrets are I will look for the top 1 or 2 sales reps. And so I'll look at who's hitting their number most consistently because they probably know a thing or two about the product and the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is I'll find a couple of really good technical resources, whether they're solution architects or engineers or something like that. And I will set up pretty regular cadence conversations with them just so I could be asking them questions. And then once I feel more comfortable, then I'll say, okay, I want to pitch the product to you. And you tell me if I'm using the wrong terminology or if I'm highlighting the wrong features or capabilities. So I think the core essence of this is being willing to look foolish and doing that in kind of a safe, controlled environment. You don't want to look foolish when you're doing a public demo in front of a bunch of people. You want to do that in an environment where you can get immediate feedback on this is what it needs to be and this is how you can make some of these changes. And so that was my main approach for each of these companies that I've joined.
That's really good. That makes a lot of sense too. What about those that are in situations where they have many products to launch and several individuals to work with and they're just getting started? Like, would you say targeting individuals one step at a time or all together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you're spot on. Like I think of my time at AWS where we were launching products all the time. And there was just very little time to get to know the product. And so what I did, and fortunately AWS already had this practice in place, and I've introduced this in companies since, was they had a product release document. And in this document, it was everything that they needed to know about that product, who the ICP was, the pain points that they were trying to solve, and what life is life without this product or capability. And so when I've gone into companies since, if they say, well, we need to launch this new product or products, and there's a bunch of them, then I'll say, okay, here's what I need you to fill out. And I give them this PRD template. And sometimes they'll say, well, we don't have time to fill this out. And then I say, then I don't have time to launch it.
Okay,
I can't launch something that I don't know, right? Like that's so.
That's
Uh,
great.
so it's helped because they realize, okay, I'm not subservient. And there's a challenge with some of this. There are some people that will look at marketing as a cost center. I tell people this when they tell me this. I say, look, then that takes my seat away from the table. And I think you hired me because I have something to contribute. And so if you look at me as a cost center and I'm subservient and I just need to do what it is that you need to get done, you're not going to have the type of outcomes that you really want. And so we need to have a mutual conversation. And so if you want me to launch this, this is what I need to be able to launch it.
I love that.
I totally love that. And in the past year, I was learning my voice in that capacity where I had to stand up for myself and be very direct, more direct than I'm accustomed to. So yeah, that's really good. That, and for you, James, you're so like soft and nice and very professional. So coming from you, I'm glad to know that I wasn't the one that came off so strong, that it has to be done.
You're right. It has to be done. If they want the results that are really important to them, we can be firm in that. We could say, this is what you're going to need. Otherwise, we're going to be making it up. And then they won't be happy with the outcome either. So we'll all be happier together with that.
It's really interesting to hear that approach, James, because mine is a little different, and I can see how yours is very effective. Obviously, I've seen it in action. My plan going into an org and learning a product is basically to become best friends with product management first, to have really great relationships with them, to provide them value from the start, whether that's like competitive market research, helping them see that like they need support in kind of pushing out the product to the public. So that's my approach. So I start with product, you start with sales. Veronica, who do you start with?
It's a combination of both and it depends on the organization. But I have to agree with both of you. Someone at our previous organization, an East level staff, told me become best friends with the salesperson, the top dog, and then learn the product that way, learn the story, learn the customer because they're head on. I didn't understand it then, and I went a different approach and befriended my product manager. But it's a combination of both. Now, you have to show value. And, here's the problem. Some product teams don't care what product marketing does. They don't see our value, even if you
That's why we
try to
got to make
throw it
them
over.
care.
You know what I mean? Some do, some don't. Some are accustomed to working with us, and some just see us as go create a logo. I'm like, wait, that's not what we do. They hear marketing and they automatically assume that we're going to go and create a logo or build a website.
Or make a pretty PowerPoint.
Or make a pretty PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Right. So little do they know, although I know how to build a website, that's not my forte. And I am not creative whatsoever. So building pretty PowerPoints, I give that on to our creative team, So they have to learn. Like we do so much more. And so I think it's a combination of both. And it depends on how the company, I guess, is structured. But definitely you need to know, to be that voice of the customer and that storyteller, you need to speak to someone who's talking directly to customers.
I agree. You have to get to both. When I'm in those situations where they aren't educated about product marketing, that's why I think it's so important to start with product. So what I've done in the past, if someone is new to product marketing, if the company is new to product marketing, is I do a gap analysis. And that gap analysis covers what people are doing today, who's doing it, what they're not doing, and who should be doing things. And I ask all of the product managers, stakeholders, so usually product leader, sales leader, marketing leader, maybe the CEO if the company's small enough. And I ask them these questions. I have them rank these things. And then I say, okay, guys, these are the top 5 things that all of you told me need to be done. So this is what I, as product marketing, am going to do over the next 3 months, first 90 days. And I fill out that assessment as well. And typically I sit with them so that we can have a discussion, because I have seen so many light bulbs go off during those discussions. Oh, no one's doing that. That's why you're here. Or, oh yeah, my team shouldn't be doing this. Oh, that's why you're here. So that's been my approach.
I think
I love that approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. I did something similar, especially at very well-established companies where they're just kind of, this is just what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I joined Samsung, are you two familiar with the Pragmatic Institute's The Pragmatic Framework?
Yes.
Yep.
Such a beautiful piece, right? And so what I did there was I printed that off. And then I went from person to person, team to team, and I said, hey, can you help me put people's names on this?
Yeah,
Who
that's
owns what?
very similar. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, very similar to what you're doing, right? And then at the end, then I went back to my boss and I said, hey, boss, here's what these other people are saying. Oh, and anytime I went to somebody, I asked them to validate. Hey, here's what the last person told me. Would you agree with this? And they'd say, well, yeah, but maybe it's more like. So we worked on this. And then I went to my boss and said, here's what everybody says that they're doing. And here are the gaps or maybe the overlap. And this is one of the biggest learnings that I had when it came to moving from one company to the next. Not only was I learning different tech industries, but I was also learning that product marketing is different in every company.
Yes, it is.
One company I was heavily involved in developing the ICP, and then another one it was all about win loss. There are different aspects, and a lot of that just depends on the stage and the maturity of the company and the products. And so when I went to one company, I remember thinking, they're doing it all wrong. They don't know what they're doing here. And I went, oh, no, things are just different. What's fun about being in product marketing is you can evolve your skill sets to meet the needs of the company and the teams that you're working with.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. Like my most recent company, they had me launch the competitive intelligence program. And so I learned so much, not just launching like we are using a tool to launch it, but just learning so much in general on the whole competitors and our competitive intel, and not just creating battle cards, but just, the constant research and so on. So that is a skill set that I can take. Although I did it at our previous organization, we were in charge of our own battle cards and so on, but just the next step up, and things are done differently. Like you said, I've learned that some things are better at other organizations than others, but it also depends on the company's culture, whether they're going to embrace, like Katie, you mentioned you came in with a gap analysis. At our last organization, they valued that. They valued you coming in and doing that. But at some organizations, they're not ready for that. They're not ready for change. And so it just depends on the organization. It
Most of
does.
them aren't ready for change.
That too. Yeah.
So I think that's part of it.
I'll just say change is hard for any company, especially if you're coming in as the first product marketer. That's so hard for everybody because they have been doing the roles and responsibilities of product marketing. And here you come in and you say, that's my job now. And there's the careful way of being able to have this conversation. I ran into this at a previous company where there are some people saying, well, this is what we do. And this is our key focus. And so then I pull out that pragmatic framework and I say, well, okay, what else are you working on? And then they start filling out like, well, responsible for this and this and this and this. And then I say, you know what? Let me show you some of the things that I'm really good at that I could probably take off of your plate for you if you're okay with this, because I would like for you to have the time you need to focus on some of these other priorities that are important to you. And that can go well. In most instances, I'll say it goes really well. There are still some people that just really struggle with change.
Most definitely. So can you share a time when this typically happens when you first start an organization and you have to jump in during the middle of a new launch, right? It's never like, oh, James, you get 90 days to really just get your feet wet. They all say you get 90 days. It's not fact. You're jumping in the middle of a launch. Can you describe a time or share a time where you had to learn a completely new product quickly, because within the first 30 to 60 days of you joining, that launch date was coming?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first experience that comes to my mind is one that I regret. I'll share something that I wish I had spoken up more, right? So again, this is back with Samsung again, and I'd been with the company. I think I've been with the company 30 days, and we were having a planning meeting for this big event, and this was our first time going to this event. Now, again, at Samsung, these were commercial grade displays, the TVs, and somebody had the big idea to go to a printing conference and to sponsor a booth at a print conference. And the conference was amazing. This is people selling these massive printing machines that are bigger than a house, the things that people would use to make newspapers or flyers or things like that. So there are all these signage companies, there are all these different people there showing this is what we could do for billboards and this is what we could do for this, whatever. And somebody had a really bold idea to say, let's show digital signage. and totally disrupt this area. And I was so excited about this. I thought this was great. And I was in this planning meeting and people were asking the question, well, what should our messaging be? And people were saying, well, this is what we did at this last digital trade show. So why don't we just do the same thing over there? And people are like, yeah, that's easy. Yeah, that sounds good. And I was going, we can't do this. Totally
Not the
different
same kind of
persona.
ship. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like we have to completely change our messaging. And I didn't speak up in that meeting because I'm the new guy, right? And I totally should have. I totally should have. I wish I did. And I did go talk to a couple of people afterwards and I said, do you really think people who are coming to look for printers are going to be interested in looking at digital? They have already thought of digital and are probably skeptical of it. And so I think it would be a wise idea for us to completely change our approach. And I talked to these two folks and they said, they'll be okay. It'll be fine. And I wish I pushed on that because we went and we told the same story that we always did. And we walked away from that going like, yeah, that was a waste. Shouldn't have gone. Where if we had completely customized and said, here are the 5 things as to why digital is better than print, just starting very basic or something, if we had total cost of ownership of digital versus print,
So
if we went with a much stronger story, it would have been much more exciting. So anyway, that was my failure story.
I think we've all done that. It was when we're new, we're like kind of tiptoeing, getting our feet wet, and we don't want to like piss people off, our
Which can
first,
happen.
which it
It's a real fear.
yeah, and I have that fear. I know this is one of my triggers. Like I'm trying to like impress people, I guess is the right word, within your first 90 days, and you don't want to like overstep. But I'm learning now with, especially from this podcast, from our different guests, and they explain like, their mistakes that they've done. I have learned it's okay to speak up, but there's that challenge when you speak up the first 30 days of not understanding the product whole, the complete product. So you don't want to say something and then look, have that I feel stupid look.
Yeah.
So
So something that I saw recently that's helped me with this, because you're spot on, right? You don't want to look stupid. You don't want to lose credibility, right? And these are all important things. And you want to get some early wins to help solidify the value that you bring to the company, right? And a video that I saw recently was by Simon Sinek. And he says, be willing to be the idiot in the room, but you kind of give yourself permission to do that. And so, as an example, when I joined Sugar, same kind of thing. I was there for less than 30 days and we were talking about some kind of a campaign that we wanted to run in the UK. And we were going to target all of our customers about this particular thing. And we were going to tell them, hey, you got to upgrade from Sugar Enterprise to
I
Sugar
remember
Cell.
this.
Do you remember this?
This is what got me
We remember.
into, I want to be a product marketer.
And here I am. I'm super new. I don't know much about who's who and who's even on the call, which
And a lot of us were new at that time. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I said, hey, can I ask some questions? And I say, I'll caveat, I'm the new guy. I don't know as much, and so I'm going to ask some questions that you might think are pretty stupid, but I want to better understand what we're looking at here. And they said, that's fine, go for it. So I said, okay, so we want to move people from enterprise to sell. And they said, yes. And then I said, what are some of the reasons why they haven't made this move yet? If the product is better, why haven't they made the move? And this one person said, well, there's probably 8 or 9 reasons. And he just starts listing them all off. And I said, okay, those are really helpful. Thanks. And I asked some follow-up questions. And I said, okay, do you know how many of each of this group fall within those categories? And he says, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, so people that are concerned about going to the cloud, what percentage of those who haven't moved do you think fall in that category? Or how many of them can't move because of proprietary sensitive requirements for their nation, right? And he says, oh, I don't know. And I said, okay, the reason why I ask, the messaging that I'm seeing right here could frustrate or anger our customer base if we are telling them they need to move and they can't. And so if we don't know why some of these people haven't moved, we should probably do a little more checking on this before we potentially anger or frustrate or alienate some of our current customer base.
I think also just in terms of goals and projections, if they were making a goal to move, X percentage of folks, and didn't take into account that 25-30% of those people couldn't do
That
it.
they couldn't move. They
So you
couldn't.
have to know kind of
Yeah.
where that breakdown is.
Yeah. And that's why they picked Sugar in the first place, was because we gave them the flexibility that no other CRM could. And
Yeah,
so
the
instead
on-prem.
of trying to get people to move it, that's a value prop. We want to let people know they have the choice,
They
right?
have the
So,
option.
yeah.
So turn a negative into a positive. And I definitely, this gave me flashbacks. This is when I was working with you. I was on the sales enablement side mostly. And we were working together on something. And I'm like, what do you do? And you showed me the pragmatic, framework. And I'm like, I want to be him. So yes. And I still want to be, and I still want to be you. You're brilliant.
Oh,
Oh, you're so kind. I feel lucky that I get to work with two talented people like you. Like your ability to help drive meaningful sales enablement really is a function of product marketing as well, right? So you've been doing product marketing type work for a long time. And the way you brought that methodology to full effectiveness within Sugar was just awesome. I loved watching that.
Thank you. Yeah, I miss that sometimes. I miss us. What's one industry that you'd love to work in, but you haven't worked in yet?
Ooh,
I can tell you one industry I don't want to work in, manufacturing.
I don't think I would
Inside
either,
joke,
honestly.
inside joke.
that's great. I would say one industry that I haven't done yet that I think would be really interesting would be consumer packaged goods. It's a totally different space for me, right? So I've been in B2B marketing for my entire career. And to
Same.
go into consumer packaged goods would be a shift not only into B2C, but potentially into a very different set of products or use cases. I think the reason why that would be compelling to me is consumers make really rapid choices. And if you lose their attention, then you're likely not going to get it back. Now, there's some people that will just kind of beat you over the head with their marketing. I think of Grammarly as an example of that. Whoever's in charge of their marketing, they are relentless. It's just all these ads.
They are everywhere.
They are. And so in that sense, and that's kind of that B2B slash B2C play, they're doing a good job of that. But I would like to see what it would be like to be in consumer packaged goods, especially if am I bringing Tide to market, or is it some kind of a food product? Or it could be consumer electronics. It could be a new headset or software package, something like that. It'd just be interesting to try something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to do e-com. I think it would be really different.
Definitely different. I would see it a little more
Fun.
challenging, but definitely ready to take on that challenge because consumer behavior is definitely
It can be more creative too, which is
true.
which is
I think for me, I want to continue to dabble in my love hate for AI. AI is like it's I have a love hate with it, right? It definitely helps save time, but I would love to continue to dabble in the AI sector, I think. But I also enjoy the healthcare, like the EHR and all that, what I'm currently in. I love the storytelling of that. It's kind of exciting. I learned a lot, practices and physicians and how they use technology, and then how they're also using AI. So I think dabbling more into the whole AI thing for me is something I want to touch in the future.
That would be so cool. That's a great growing area. And that really is the current frontier where things are changing day by day,
Yeah.
I
literally
know it.
day to day. It's so exciting to see it
And
change.
there's so many I just heard of a new AI company out of Stockholm, Sweden that went from $0 to $10 million in 30 days of launching. I mean, I just reached out to them out of curiosity. Like,
Oh my
I would love
gosh.
to learn more about them, maybe even have them on this podcast. It's called Lovable, and it's like their version of a chat GPT. This morning, that was I try to learn something new every day, and that was my learn. So
Yeah, that's huge.
So, James, what would you say to someone who's hiring for a product marketing position and they're interviewing lots of people and they come across a person with 10 years of experience in their particular industry? And then that person is up against a person like us who has a lot of different industry experience. I feel, typically, not always, but typically, people with the more industry experience, at least recently, seem to be getting in the door at least, or getting the role. So what would you say to that person if they're considering hiring someone with different industry experience?
That's an awesome question. I would say if they are looking for more of the same, then probably take that person from that's been in industry. If they're kind of looking at, we just kind of want to continue to optimize, then yeah, it probably makes sense to take somebody that's been in industry. But if you want to bring a fresh view on that market and your go-to-market strategies, I would bring somebody from a different industry. And ideally, you want to be looking for a good cultural fit. You want to see that they're hungry and willing to learn, and those kinds of things. But you get some of the best innovation when you switch industries, because you'll learn these really cool ideas and techniques from one, and then you can find unique ways of applying it in the new one. And I think a great example of that is what happened with, not to make this a Samsung commercial, but just a really powerful example of what happened with the CEO of Samsung Electronic America. He before he came over to Samsung, he was the CEO of Johnson and Johnson. Totally different space.
Totally different.
And
Yeah.
there's value to promoting within. There's value to, there's definitely value to that. And so it really just depends on what you're working on. But you bring somebody from a completely different industry into your industry, and you'll see some really impressive results, some really nice innovative thinking. It's kind of like when you go to a different country for the first time. We come with our lens, and then when you get to that other country, you go, whoa, things are just so different here. And you're kind of in awe about it. And then after you've been in it for a while, you just kind of go, oh, that's just how things are done here. Same thing happens within industries, where pretty soon everybody's marketing looks like everybody else's. And if you really want to stand out, then I would say you should start looking for people that are not in your industry to join your company to help revitalize your marketing and your messaging and your go-to-market.
Yeah. And that's exactly what you almost did with the trade show, right?
Right,
The printing
right.
trade show. So that's a great example.
What's
Yeah,
the
thank you.
best or worst career advice you've ever received?
The worst career advice I received was do what will make you a lot of money, even if you hate it, because at least you're going to make a lot of money and then you could retire early.
I learned that.
And
No.
and that's just not a good recipe for happiness in life. So there's that. One of the best pieces of advice that I got was around this idea of continual improvement. So I love what you mentioned, Veronica, about you're learning every day. You want to find something that you are learning something new every day, and that's powerful. When I had at a past company, I had this great mentor who kind of took me under his wing. We both had come from HP, and we were now both at this other company. We didn't know each other at HP, but we kind of commiserated with how things were different at this other company, right? And how we were able to bring some interesting change at this firm. And he showed me this great template. He says, whenever you get a new boss, or even before you get a new boss, if you want to continue to improve, you want to have this nice chart slide thing that says, this is who I am. These are my greatest strengths. These are the things that I want to focus on and improve. And then this is where I want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. Just a very simple thing. And he said, you put that together, you share that with your boss, and that's going to lead to conversations, because believe it or not, our bosses don't know what's in our mind. They can't read our mind. And sometimes we'll get upset when we're not getting a promotion, or there's an opportunity and they didn't even ask us if we were interested. And it's really not their fault. It's ours for not voicing that, for being proactive. And so that was really helpful for me, where I brought that to my boss, and it was great. And then after a while, my boss left, and then we got a new boss. And that's the biggest challenge. When you get a new boss, that's the worst, because then it's almost like day one all over again, and you have to prove yourself. And so I brought this into my new boss, and she was so impressed by that. She says, you are the only person in our entire org who has brought me anything like this. And so she says, 10 points to you. And I went, go her, 10 points to Gryffindor. But it was one of those moments where I was making her job easier by knowing who I was, my skill sets, and really where I wanted to go. So that way, if there were opportunities, she could leverage that, and it was helpful.
I love that. That's a great idea, actually. I love that. I got to talk to you offline about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to send you the template. It's been
Yeah,
helpful.
that's what I love about this podcast. You just learn so much, so from everyone and just different ideas. So
You've had such great speakers on here, so many great, talented people. It's been so fun to see who you bring on and to hear their messages. So you're doing a great job of finding some very talented people. I'm sorry to bring down the level of awesomeness with.
I was just about to say, James, you're on that list. That's
You're
why
on
you're
that
here.
list for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah. And we are running out of time. And so that's actually a great segue out for us. We loved having you here today.
And I
Maybe
hope
we'll
you
have
can
you
come
back in the
back.
future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we hope you can come back. And James, I just want to thank you for everything, for your mentorship, for just sharing your wealth of knowledge, and even for getting me in product marketing.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on, and this really has been really fun. I've really enjoyed being able to visit with both of you again. It's kind of like getting the band back together. So really,
You're
really
going to
thank you
reunite.
for what you're doing. And you're doing such great work. For anybody that wants to learn more about this area, they have a really fun way of being able to learn about it. So congratulations to both of you for what you're doing.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
James.
Have a great one.
Thank you. You too. You take
Bye,
care.
guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.